Okay, now we're on the larger watersheds. Natural zones are greater than 30 miles. We suggest remote sensing data to model priority regions, and I'm going to show you one way to come up to do that. And we follow that with an on-the-ground assessment. You know, the people that are helping develop this plan get to go out and do this on-the-ground assessment. It connects them to landscape a little bit better, and I think that builds a better project in some ways itself. So next slide. So what we came up with is the wood opportunity model, it became called. Why we did that is to focus the ground efforts to the best locations for wood placement. So following all this IMW science, I've got 16 years experience on the IMW habitat piece. Mara worked in the fish piece for 10 years on the IMW. She's a research scientist at the field. So how we did this, we used the Esri model builder tool. Just used a suitability modeling approach that uses spatial data sets, scales the metrics, and uses a weighted, they're scaled and weighted based on local input, and then it basically adds through all the layers to give you a score. So next slide. So overall, this one actually combines 3 submodels to come up with a wood placement score, the salmon score, plus the project feasibility score, plus the wood response score, and then you get your wood opportunity model. And next slide. So salmon, fish use is the hardest piece to come up with. For Newaukum River, we had IMW style full census survey for 3 years, so that was easy. For Cloqualum Creek, we've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 different fish distributions that we had to work through 3 meetings to get into something that's usable. So that took a little while. That is the hardest part. So we've got an intrinsic potential model for salmon for just the coast region that was built in NetMap before I joined the region. So we use that. That's a geomorphic model that shows where the fish would best be if the fish could be there. So there's barriers in the way, that doesn't matter. It's giving you the best geomorphology for coho or snook. We don't have chum, so that's one challenge we've got. So we also have land use, the biological intactness of that land, you get scored that way, and the mean August stream temperature, those combined for the salmon site. Those are summer chum, Big Beef Creek. Next slide. So using the Walker River, sorry, as my example. It's done. Cloqualum's in process currently. Kalawala is done as well, but it's big and hard to handle. So the salmon score looks like this. Newaukum, they scored the coldest mean August temperatures as best for salmon. So you kind of see a gradient up through the watershed as it being better for salmon. It's pixelated. The line work becomes pixelated in a raster model sort of things to build these. And then we put it back to the line work in the end, but it shows the headwaters being best, and then you can see kind of the streams where salmon exist. Dark blue is best, white is worst. You can barely see the white there, but it grades down to white in the ditched areas and the agricultural lands of Newaukum, which now it's turning into rural residential, which is a way bigger challenge than ag was. So there's 20 landowners instead of 1 or more. Next slide. Then there's a feasibility model. The highest score on the feasibility model is locations where projects are easier to build, so not near infrastructure, your stream power flow channels are narrowed. We also use land use again, distance from the roads, so we're trying to figure out how easy it is to get in there and the slope. So if it's helicopter work, that's going to be graded by the field assessment, really finally. And this, we're not really trying to predict whether you're going to be able to drive equipment in, that you'll figure that out when you're out there. It's a challenge. There's some old roads that might be able to be used. I was on warehouse land on the walk, and we found a couple of old splash dams and old roads that could possibly be used to get into spots that would be hard to get to.
And you ever, sorry to interrupt, have you ever experienced recommissioning or previously decommissioned forest access road to do a project?
On Abernathy Creek, they're working on DNR land, and they did quite a bit of stuff that you don't see in a lot of places. They're driving equipment up and down the creek, and they had access probably, and they used what were rough campsites, access through those, and then they filled in with wood and stuff so they couldn't camp there anymore too. So it was kind of a win-win for both parties. And when you can work that kind of thing out, that on this warehouse land, there's an old train car in the river, so potentially at one of the sites we could get equipment down there and also get that out. So they might appreciate that. We'll see. That partnership is ongoing. It's a challenging partnership with the it's new restoration on their lands is kind of niche. We got Trout Unlimited working with them now. The South Puget Sound and Salmon Enhancement Group's been working with them on the shoots as well. And somebody's working with them down off the Calhoun River as well. So the feasibility model, it's actually got two submodels of access and engineering ease, channel width and stream power. The engineering ease, access is the slope. Land use again is scored by our local group on whether, they're doing outreach. So you'll see next slide. So you can see on the access model, upper left, dark blue is good again, white is not good. So you can see some properties where they've already done outreach down there in the lower main end, where we were able to score the properties appropriately based on that outreach for access even. So engineering and feasibility model come together, it all comes together for that feasibility model, which is kind of the opposite of your SAM model. So, next slide. We'll go back. That's Abernathy Creek Headwaters project. Again, that was a narrow kind of channelized reach through a nice floodplain and now that was 2 years after the project, I think, right there. Immediately, they increased water surface area massive. It's quite a project to see if you're ever in there. Abernathy Creek, Lower Columbia. Next slide. Wood response score. So we've got a beaver intrinsic potential model from that's Dick Renner et al. 2018. I recreated it in a net map. Rural net map by Terrain Works is a watershed model partnership bought our whole area before I started to do the salmon IPs. So I was able to use it to rebuild this beaver intrinsic potential model. It gives me 100-meter reach intervals where Dick Renner is typically building it trip to trip. He's done it for the shale space as well. And he looked at my work, they compared well. So there was no qualms about using it. He liked the fact that it was able to do the 100-meter reaches in some ways. But his contract's got that. And then we use a generic erosion potential model that comes out of that map too, which is most of the slope goes into that. So if you've got the ability of colluvium and such to get to the channel, and you've got an area where beavers could build a dam, you've got a place that's pretty stable and it's gonna have the materials to build habitat with that wood. Next slide. So in the Whatcom River, dark blue's best, white's not so good. See a lot of areas where beavers build dams, and then the lower part of Whatcom's pretty flat. So, and Lucas Creek is just beautiful, and there are beaver complexes there. And in fact, you'll see when we did some assessment, we found lots of beavers. So next slide. These last couple of slides have the creek in the background as well. So it just plugged the channel with wood and other places. So the result that we come up with out of that model, so you get that, is that, oh, those were the three submodels, so we're coming to the result. But what we do with the result is we classify that as the high priority locations, the top 20% locations. So that's based on this 20% of restoration of in-stream floodplain is the minimum needed to generate a 25% increase in co-host multiplication. That's from Roney et al. 2010. So we're going for 20% restoration on this watershed plan. That's what they came up with. They think they can pull that off in a 5-year, probably gonna be 10-year, 10.
Maybe 15.
Maybe 50. Next slide. Planning phase took almost 2. The final wood opportunity model, that's what you come up with right there. So there's a west dark blue now. And you combine all this together, but you see some spots that are pretty good. And the upper, I don't have a pointer. Maybe I can point real quick.
You're a laser.
Is there? No, I'm not ready to see it. My eyesight went with my field work. One day I was trying to look at my compass. Yeah, can you point that south fork of Whatcom?
Right here.
Yeah. Oh, look, right there. So that's we assessed that part. You'll see a little bit of that shortly here. So Bernier Creek goes straight up, and then the headwaters of where those two forks come together to make the south like that. And next slide. So we did some lumping on what we saw there. And it's like one more time. And that is our assessment plan. So we took out and did that one chunk, kind of unfunded myself. Alex Gustafson from China Limited. John Gaffney from Interfood. And Chris, I forgot his last name. He's formerly Lewis Conservationist, and now he took a job with Lewis County instead. Mostly it's he and I got out there and hiked all that and did the assessment. We actually collected data, so we're out to validate the model, so we collected a bunch of data on all that piece. And now we're coming up with more of a rapid assessment. So next slide. For Whatcom again, product coming out of that, there's a restoration target of 24.8 miles, 20% of the 124 street miles. So instead of going out and hiking 124 miles of street, we only have to go out and hike 24.8 now. So that cut it down quite a bit. 12.4 of that is for wood treatment. 12.4 is riparian. That's a similar model, different presentation. So those are combined for that 20% of that 124 street miles for Whatcom. That's how they planned it. So overall, there's a field assessment of, I think my numbers are wrong somehow there, but 25.6. Oh, our target is 24.8, but we're hiking 25.6. So the riparian is mostly Not, it's mostly a desk exercise to see the actual.
Is there a field assessment, like a field validation of the model?
We won't have to validate it anymore, we've done that piece, so now we're developing what will be a rapid assessment, checking off a couple of boxes. Next slide. So we're going for wood volumes, oxen bolt 2007, which is kind of the standard for most engineering right now, and it's really smaller. This is going for streams more like 3 to 15 meters. That's where the work is cost effective and stays in place. That makes it cost effective right off the bat. You don't lose the project. A lot of this can be handled or less engineered. It's staying away from infrastructure and such, so you're gonna save costs. So the initial field assessment, model validation, now we've gotten mostly through that upper south fork in Lachlan. Jacob pointed to, and the map there, so the purple is the top 20% location, the underlying green is our assessment line where we collect the data. And you can kind of see numbers for 10 unofficial sub-regions where we collected. From that, we're developing records. There's a couple of us looking pretty lazy out there because it was a nice day. We got worse. We surveyed through the winter, so we were out there on solstice, which is kind of cool. The sun never got much up here. Next slide. So this is kind of validation matrix that came out of that. The salmon use down the center, you see a lot of orange red in there because that seasonality when we were out there, the juveniles went into hiding at 50 degrees water temperature, juvenile coho high. They only come out at night, so you gotta snort nighttime to see. I compared daytime versus nighttime snorkeling, I can prove that. For 16. Differently colored, those are non-hazardous reach. Reach 10 is above a falls. And the other one, just don't think fish were using. It got a little steeper, boulder, but I can't prove it, but I still shading it that way. But otherwise, the green is best. Yellow is kind of mediocre, doable. Orange is kind of not so great, except for the wood count piece where orange is where you want to work because the wood count is low. So we got one area, site 7, I believe it was, that had 120 pieces of wood for 100 years. So and a healthy riparian zone with second story undergrowth. We don't need to do work there. You know, that's what we came up with. There's plenty of wood, it's in good shape, it's not deteriorating. There's new wood coming. So that one is just off the list. So that's where the field assessment comes in, hopefully. You see site 3, which is mostly green all the way down, except for the wood count is really bad. We didn't get there in time to see juveniles. But there's 2 miles of wood placement planned for that now. And it won Shale Space and Surfboard grant, so it should be funded in process next year. These are the criteria: the distance from road, slope from road, infrastructure constraints, landowner willingness. This is kind of make up the rapid assessment, checking out these boxes, whether they fit or not. So, next slide. That's a debris flow, Upper Vernier Creek, where the debris flow tailed out in 2007. And it's got a pond with cattails on it. It's really neat. You're actually falling through the stream into the wood below you. It's all kind of perched up on top of probably 15 feet buried wood there. It's really good stuff. Next slide. What we learned in the validation field assessment, the model performed well. Overall, we did find a 200-meter long beaver pond complex for Near Creek that was already in place. The work that is proposed is downstream of that, where it's in danger of losing the gravel because the ponds have all tied above. So we need to keep the gravel in place, capture as much more, and it's a fairly dirty creek, so tumble on the gravel as well. Yeah. So the 2 miles is proposed and gonna be funded at Bernier Creek. She also got funded to complete the assessment. That'll be contracted out. So, exceptions where the wood counts were adequate. Beaver presence, so there's pond complexes already, so having beavers present. If you're putting wood in the stream, the beaver's gonna use that whole thing, so you don't need to do as much work as you think you do when there's actually beaver there. There's more work coming out of the IMW and involves beaver and restoration. The waterfalls that blocked an avenue, and we did have some roads that were either decommissioned or blocked by slides and had to find alternate routes, so it's not as easy to get in as we thought. But there's wood availability in the clear cuts near these areas, and that's kind of where I would like them to grab out of too for their hand place projects. That's my dog stop car. That's Capelos River. Capelos River is pretty cool. That's a jam in there. It's about 20 feet tall. So that's what I've got on this slide.
Thank you, Ned.
Yep. Either you can have a second breakfast for extra coffee and ask me a lot of questions.
Ned, was there anything about like hyperetic exchange in the model at all? Or did you have data on that got incorporated or anything for cold water refuge?
We do understand that hyperetic exchange is part of the wood placement process. That's one of the benefits you're getting from wood placement in streams. It's also cooling the water in a lot of places. By forcing it into that hyperetic zone, then it comes back out cool. Ray's Harbor Conservation District is currently monitoring a site on Schaefer Creek. Anthony, you guys may know him. We're funding it from the foundation where I work. But he's shown some promise from small stream wood placement that's recharging the aquifer area. And I'll let him tell you what it turns out. That's how science works. I'm just giving it to you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Steven?
Yeah, sounds like you've been working in these watersheds for a long time. Could you talk about whether you have to go back and do maintenance on existing projects and enhancement and what you think you might have in the future?
I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a practitioner, I'm a field scientist.
Yeah, you're
Now I'm kind of a restoration ecologist. It's kind of bringing the science to the practitioners. Is how I see myself in some ways, but maintenance work, that's kind of coming out of the lower Columbia as well, more on the Grays River. The Cowles tribe has kind of been at the forefront of wood placement streams for a while, and they've come to the conclusion you kind of need to put one layer down capture gravel and then put another layer of wood on top of that. And some of these really scoured out bed places, you know, good canals, gravel rich, put wood in there and it's buried the next day. So it depends on your system. And yeah, even in Little Anderson Creek and the canal, the first wood placement was just giant logs, big full-size logs that helicoptered in to a stream that was no greater than 10 meters across, and most of them ended up kind of perched. They put the wood in right after a flood, and it was highly degraded, the whole system. And then cut back down after that flood, and left the wood kind of perched, so they went in with some smaller wood back on there too. That
Some of the maintenance too, you mentioned Anthony for Grace Harbor.
Yep.
I'm actually part of that project. And, for the pilot project, we worked on it for 2 years. I wasn't part of the first year, but they put in about 21, we basically tied a bunch of like, pre-commercial thinned, trees together and like hauled them into the site. And we put in about 21 structures, and then the next year, 2 of them blew out, because we put in posts like keep them down, but some places were really hard to drive, so they blew out within the next flood season, so we just put in more, of those bundles, and, they seem to be holding. So I would say definitely some maintenance, probably for the next year after implementation.
That's a pretty good success rate, losing two, and, you know, you're learning as long as your crew stays the same. There's a lot of turnover in this field. Sorry, I think camping on wheel drive. But yeah, the maintenance on these smaller structures may be more frequent than larger wood. I'm only seeing wood last maybe 15 years in the field anyway, so it's pretty decomposed and buggy. I'm gonna have to cough real bit. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, anyway, I've been hiking around, we hiked like 20 miles yesterday, I'm pretty dread it. She swims every chance she gets, so she stays hydrated. But I almost lost her down or Ingles Creek in Whitewater, it's pretty scary, but. Another question? Go ahead.
How did you go about the landowner?
As Lewis Conservation District, they went door to door. And they got scared and don't go back to some of the places and things like that. So right now, the same thing's happening in Plum. They're funded through ASRP to do landowner outreach, and this is gonna help them target that outreach, so they don't have to go to every scary house out there. So, and I think that's probably what John was after. So, you know, the more targeted outreach, you know, you don't have to go to this property for tasking, you're gonna do wood placement, at least on your first round of wood placement, that might be a benefit, you'll get things done faster, you know. What we're doing on the walk-in is mostly, almost all of it is on warehouse. So once they get going with the warehouse, it'll happen quickly because it's all behind gates. You can haul bigger wood around, whatever you want. Sure. Any questions?
I got a couple for you. Does this model take into much consideration the existing wood? The existing conditions of wood?
We did that in Claw, so you were able, we also contracted DFW to do that. High resolution change detection stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't get the change detection done part, we got a one-time picture of what our current riparian is like and stuff, so we're able to utilize that or IRMA data from USFS either or to kind of get at where the old growth is. and where we don't think we need to work. And then Claw that cuts off the whole South Fork Claw, which is in the park. And would be a great place to go assess, but we don't think we need to. That's one way to do it. The field assessment is the more fun way to do it. And it really, beyond doing it free in the winter, and it's 2 hour commute for me each time that I had to go. It was the people who were working on it got more connected with the stream, and we had the interface engineer out with us for one day to get like engineering perspective of how, and he was the one that was pointing out the healthier riparian zones, so more than the biologists were. So, that's not always the case, I don't think. Your lack of wood most everywhere. In a lot of places, the streams are too down cut to actually start knocking wood back in, so we'll put wood in to bring it back up, and then it starts to get the roots, knocking trees. So, next one, did I answer that?
Yeah, because my follow-up was for streams that are difficult to field survey, especially those, 3 to 10 meter streams that are predominantly maybe private lands. If you have any experience using LiDAR to identify key pieces of wood in streams, and if you had, how your experiences and the accuracy of being able to separate wood pieces from standard terrain with LiDAR.
I know that's very easy to do.
I'm being sales pitched by a group that's claiming they can accomplish that to me right now. So
Maybe.
I'm asking around.
Well, if they're flying a drone.
No, they're flying point assessment.
Huh. Yeah. I wouldn't feel very confident in that. I think even where you can see a stream of air photos and you can see the wood that's still going out there and seeing how functional it is matters. So there can be all kinds of wood that's perched high on the gravel bar that they're picking up with LiDAR, but it's not functional, Yeah, I'd like to see their work to tell you more. That seems.
I'll follow.
We tried a lot of things like photographing. And we were doing that photogrammetry at PFW right when I left on a couple of log jams. And I said, no, I never saw results, and I don't know if they're ever going to be, but. So that would have been cool, but you could fly a drone at close range, but you may as well have a person there because they got to walk on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know that drone works is cheaper than a couple of people. Because
we've got a quite expensive drone, and it's still not large enough to carry the LiDAR that would be required to do that. So.
Then you got that huge investment and still an operator.
Yes.
You can hire, my first paid job in salmon recovery was with Thurston Conservation District. I think I made $4.92 an hour. States. It's been 25 years, still been working on this stuff. So, and mostly it was on this. Was supposed to be a non-biased scientist, so we tried to stay out of what the projects were happening in our area, studying them. And then they eventually had me develop some watershed plans in the Hood Canal, and that's kind of where this all came from. Somebody asked me where they put wood in the Newaukum, and build a suitability model GIS, and it works pretty well, and it's relatively cheap is kind of part of it, and the hands-on user experience and the arguing over fish distribution and everything that goes into it really builds a group of people that is gonna go forward in the watershed. And that's kind of playing out really well so far.
Well, appreciate your time, Ed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dad.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I'd like to.
Yeah. Dude, it seemed to help when I wasn't double joined. It only crashed once after I turned my phone off. I don't know why it's crashing.
Well, I mean, if it's taking us, it's taking a lot, even if you had them double up in the office. We got, Mr. Brian, Jeff, Hey, good morning, everybody. I think we're gonna get started here. We lost a couple of minutes with some technology stuff, but glad y'all made it over. Some familiar faces in the crowd. But for those of you who do not know me, I'm Nick George. I'm the state coordinator for the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. So I'm with US Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm from the federal government here to help, right? Only a couple laughs on that. You guys are really trying to federal government. It's too early.
Reagan fan.
What's that?
Reagan fan.
Yeah. So, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program is what I do. I'm based out of Olympia, and we have 7 other biologists throughout the state. And we are a voluntary program that works with private landowners. That might sound very familiar, because that's what most of you all do as well. Our mission is to work with those landowners to achieve this voluntary restoration on private lands. We have financial and technical assistance, and we are trying to benefit federal trust species. And so what I mean by that is federally threatened or endangered species, state endangered or listed species, migratory birds, anadromous fish, or other species of concern, right? Like we have at-risk species that, are not doing well, and they might not be listed, but that's just because no one's petitioned for it yet, and we should still be focusing on that. And so we're able to work with these landowners through this financial or technical assistance and meet common objectives. That's really the name of the game. We work a program that's in all 50 states now. To give you a little background of the program, those of you that are familiar with like the Farm Bill came out in 1985, right? And so by 1987, there was a big push to get some more technical assistance in the wildlife realm of things. So in 1987, that's when the Partners program came about in Minnesota. And after that, it slowly crept across the country, now in all 50 states and territories, and just implementing good habitat along with our partners, conservation districts, and NRCS. And to give you a little bit of my background, so maybe you can actually start to trust me. I'm standing up here and you don't yet, but I used to work for a conservation district for 3 years, then I worked for NRCS, and then I came over to US Fish and Wildlife Service. So for the better part of 15 years, I've been working with private landowners, implementing voluntary practices. Boring words on a screen, right? But it's just to show you that, we have a congressional act, so this isn't a type of funding that's gonna come and go. This is something in 2006. So it was a long time between 87 and 2006, and there was not an act, so this was something that was obligated every year, but it wasn't, expected. But now that we have this act, it is expected to have funding obligated every year, coming down to the regions, and then the states, and then into our local communities. And so, some of what our policy says is things that I could add. Some of our objectives are to implement the habitat benefit species that I mentioned, but also work with our partners. It specifically outlines USDA in our policy, but for us that work on the ground and actually know our partners, working with conservation districts is critical to implementing some of those programs, and then even the programs that you have at your disposal, such as state conservation commission funding, VSP, all the other random funding sources that come about and have 3-day deadlines to submit proposals, right? Some of our responsibilities when we are developing projects with our landowners is the design, implementation, and then also the monitoring. And, community involvement is huge. So, like I said, I'm based out of Olympia, I'm mostly working hand in hand with like Thurston CD, and we do a lot of, community outreach, we do landowner workshops, we do listening sessions. We try to understand what our community needs, how we can fit those gaps, what resources we can bring in to meet those common objectives. And we do have a national prioritization at 70-30 split, which is really cool. 70% of our funds mandated to go on the ground. And, it's something we take pretty seriously. Next slide. And so when we're developing these projects, I want to hit on that these are cooperative agreements, and that might not mean much versus what you're granted. For us, it's near and dear to our hearts because we're substantially involved. This is not a granting program. There is no request for proposals. We are out there, hopefully from the beginning, developing the project hand in hand with our partners and our local community members. That's not to say we can't be brought in, kind of after the fact. If you've already made first contact, that's great. You start developing the project. We're substantially involved, and that substantial involvement is kind of what I hit on. It's helping out with the design, helping out with, getting specs on the materials, and then implementation. Like we can actually go out, a lot of us are certified to run equipment. I can run pretty much everything besides a scraper. I still want to run the scraper, but, build wetlands, have put in water pipeline, all of those things. And so that is, for some of our landowners, that's a large incentive as well, because they may not have the equipment to implement some of these projects, or a lot of the producers that we work with have off-farm jobs, right? So it's the time that it takes to implement these projects. The national goal program is to secure a 50% cost share on our projects. The cool thing is, yes, cash could be included, but in-kind contributions from non-service sources. That's huge, especially in this conversation, because we all are non-service sources. So anything that you're putting into the project, that is in-kind contribution that counts towards the agreement. And another really neat thing, not completely foreign to where you all deal with in some of your programs, but we can count in-kind services from the landowner into those contributions as well. So we give that a real world value. If someone's gonna jump on a tractor or an excavator, do some of the work, you have an hourly wage for that person and that piece of equipment. And so that 50% match, at first it's kind of daunting, but it's pretty easily met when you add in all those things. And as I go, feel free to interrupt me, you don't have to wait for questions again, so. There, oh, yes.
What do you use for hourly wage to gauge that amount that you reimburse for that?
Whatever you tell me to use. Usually, honestly, I just reach out to you, Margaret, and you tell me what the going rate is in the state of Washington. I'm not, doing economic analysis of Washington State, so that is usually what we use. The last note on this page, so 10-year landowner agreements, that's our minimum, we can always go above that. Those 10 years of habitat retention period, and so from the date of signature, it is saying, please do not rip out what we just spent federal taxpayer dollars to put in. And if you do, for some reason, we would request a prorated amount back.
Is 10 years based on, project success or failure measures? Where's that number?
That's a really good question. Actually, that number's been with the program since the beginning. It's mostly because, it's like a practice standard. For us, we expect most of these practices to hold up for 10 years, and we're not gonna see benefits to some of these projects. We see benefits immediately to wildlife, but a lot of these projects can be 3 to 5 years before we see these results. So we would like to have at least, follow.
Yeah, how often do the contracts actually end after 10 years and land isn't continually maintained?
That's awesome. We actually did a longevity study and 92.7% of our landowners across the nation have upheld their habitats, which is amazing.
Is monitoring required for the second?
Yeah, so we do that. Yeah, so it's not on the landowner, it's, I mean, conservation district wants to do the monitoring, not gonna tell them. But yeah, it's, we kind of go out like year 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9 is our schedule. It's kind of becoming a daunting task as we get more and more projects. And you look at that Gantt chart, but yes, that is something that we do. We have monitoring protocols. Yeah, so our priorities, when we're looking at projects, what are we gonna fund, right? We kind of have this evaluation criteria that we're looking at, and you know, some of you are working in landscapes where there's national wildlife refuge, right? So we're part of the National Wildlife Refuge System within Fish and Wildlife Service. And so we want to complement those management actions. That is, you know, that's gonna get you a lot of points right there. If they have their, you know, comprehensive management plan within the refuge system, in that particular refuge, if we're able to do something adjacent or within a reasonable landscape that's gonna benefit the species that they're focusing on, implementing similar practices or reducing threats to the refuge, that would be huge. That's not to say that is an absolute criteria, because a lot of you are working in landscapes where you don't have wildlife refuge, and that's fine. Because you're benefiting federal trust resources. For building trust within the local community, that's huge, especially for me. You know, being a part of the community is absolutely necessary to implement this conservation within our landscapes. If you're not a part of the community, you're not understanding the needs, and you're not gaining the trust of your partners and the people that you're actually working with. So, you know, doing those things that I mentioned earlier, you know, going to community meetings, having listening sessions, things like that. Meeting common objectives, working with our partners. Fragmentation, if we're able to articulate how we are increasing connectivity, reducing that fragmentation, that's huge, especially with the threats that we're facing these days, and creating these self-sustaining systems. And those are hard. We have a lot of invasive spaces, we have climate change, climate crisis. So self-sustaining systems are kind of a fluid term, but that is something that we're not trying to put a lot of the burden on the landowner. Like, we're gonna create something that the landowner has to rigorously maintain for, you know, years to come, if that makes sense. Then, so things we do not, those are all the things we do, probably not maybe 50% of the things we do, but we do not operate as a traditional grant program, we kind of mentioned that. Do not solicit RFPs. So do not expect, you know, me to send out this request for proposals. Feel free to come to your local biologist or to me as a state coordinator, and I'll have a map of your, you know, where our biologists are, and bring ideas to us or invite us out on site visits. We are not regulatory. I know I've got this batch on Reddit, sometimes has a regulatory thought to it, and we do have regulatory individuals, or all great individuals, by the way. Questions? I mentioned the R word. You go first, sure.
The PHS program, are you saying every fish and wildlife biologist is able to administer some sort of program through that, or project through that?
Sorry, good question.
Fish and wildlife biologists, are all of them able to administer projects through the PHS?
To the partners program?
Yes.
No, so you are a partnership fish and wildlife program biologist, or you have different duties within the US Fish and Wildlife Service. So there's technically 8 of us, me plus 7 across the state.
Piggybacking off that question, it's like how, or is it per region that your biologists are centered, or is it more the west to the east, or how do you guys locate each other?
We have geographic focus areas, and that's coming up here in a couple slides.
When you say that it does not operate as a traditional grant program, what does that mean?
It means that, okay, that might be, yes. So that we're substantially involved, like, you're not requesting funding, we're giving money, and then we don't know anything about the project. Like, we want to be involved in the design, the implementation, having the ability to have significant input into the projects. Just because that's the expertise we have design experience, we have survey experience. So that, I guess that's what I think about that comment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, is it more of a reimbursement program or like a funding upfront thing?
It could be both, depending on how we set up that agreement. If we're working directly with the landowner, and so there's multiple forks in the road, mostly reimbursement. But however, if we are working on projects that are simply materials, we could potentially buy those materials first. And I'm thinking of, we're doing a lot of water pipeline, striped grazing, so we have fencing, water pipeline, crossing hydrants, water troughs. We are definitely able, if we set up that agreement right, or in one way, we can go buy those materials, and then in most of those instances, the landowner implements those projects, that's their in-kind contribution, and it's little to no money out of their pocket, besides maybe the fuel in their equipment. Cool. Do not do a couple of things you probably read about already. Camping type mitigation, that's a huge one, especially in Western Washington right now. No purchase or rental of equipment, but this is not a surrogate for PrEP or CRP. Those are things that we cannot do. And then the ongoing maintenance piece with existing projects, particularly maybe like the prairie landscape. The prairie's a disturbance, right? But we have that 10-year retention period. And let's say we're going to implement the project and we build in maybe 3 to 5 years of follow-up in that agreement. Years 6 through 10, let's say, we cannot go back and spend money. Our agreements, our period of performance is 5 years. And so years 6 through 10, we should strategically be thinking about how to utilize other funding sources to maintain or disturb that habitat so it does not create a burden on the landowner, if that makes sense. All right, yeah, eligibility. Who can apply for these funds? What lands can we work on? Private lands, like all private land, including tribal and municipality. We cannot work on state or federal land, so those are the two we cannot work on. No state, no federal, everything else, good to go. Next slide. Oh yeah.
I've been trying to picture water.
I can send this presentation out.
Okay.
Thank you. No problem. There's the map just for Marguerite.
I just saw your slide back there, eligibility. Can U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partner funds be utilized on private property where they have an EQIP or CRP contract where they're also receiving federal funds?
Yes, so, there's stipulations on that. We cannot stack federal funding, and we cannot exceed 100% of other funding. So, let's say we're getting equipped on property, gonna be receiving, RCS as a practice standards. And it says this many species, this is an example. Sorry, we're gonna plant this many things. 9 forks, 3 grasses, cool. Get us involved, like, hey, it'd be really cool if we had like 12 forks and 5 grasses. That's great, talk it over with NRCS, make sure we're on the same page, their needs are met, the landowner needs are met, and now we're coming in, we're paying for those additional species. On the flip side, like state funding for like BSP or commission funding, there's often a gap. There's that cost share. If it's a priority project for our program, we could potentially help out with that gap and not exceed 100%. We're not gonna do that in every project, we gotta have that access to the federal trust species, right? The back?
Could you just expand a little bit on the difference between match and stacking? Stacking
funds and matching funds, can you just segregate, just parse that just a little bit for us?
Yeah, so it's mostly on the federal side, just stacking those federal funds. Let's say, NRCS historically underserved and 90% cost share. We cannot pay for the same practices to completely fill that gap. It has to be above and beyond. Like that's where kind of the stacking and then, the beneficial cost would be kind of an enhancement from the NRCS practice. That would be the difference.
So if NRCS is paying for 3 practices on the same geographic area, you can come in and pay for a 4th practice, but you cannot match those 3 practices that NRCS is funding.
Correct.
You can't basically make up the landlord match.
Correct. We can help them implement it. But it's funding, like if you're doing a pipeline, need someone to run a mini excavator, I would love to, if I had the time. So, yeah. Answer your question. Awesome. Good question. Maps. So shaded areas, that's our focus area. We have strategic plans. The strategic plans go for 5 years. This current one goes until 2026. So red dots are where people are actually located. We have 2 people here in Leavenworth, right? I was just hanging out with them yesterday and we were up in the Meadow focus area just north of us. And so we have 7 focus areas, and that is primarily where we do our work. That's not to say we can't do work outside of these focus areas. I've set a goal for our biologists to do 90% of our work in the 5-year strategic plan in these focus areas. That still leaves 10%. And I know there are good projects outside of these focus areas that need help. So that's for you all, because we're not there. We don't have our ear to the ground in those communities that are not in those shaded areas. So we need a little bit of help. There are priority species out there, but just like everybody else, we're limited by our capacity. We're trying to be more biologists in Washington, but those decisions are not up to us at a local level. Question?
So anybody near like Clark County,
Clark?
Vancouver area?
Yeah, so we kind of split that one, between our Olympia office and our Willowbrook office. They both would cover Clark County, and we've actually been working, we've created a landowner-led collaborative, the Southwest Washington Prairie Working Group. And Clark CD has been a part of that, and yeah, that's something that's growing, so we should talk later about that. Absolutely.
Are there areas shaded or anything like that? Because those are, I noticed that they don't seem to follow any of the what line they was following that because they were following catch where there's a lot of say the private large landowner.
Yeah, so we went through a 10-step analysis to create these focus areas. And I looked at, where those private lands are and what impacts we can have. Like, what are the threats to our priority species in the state of Washington? And what we could actually do about that. These are the areas that within our model really popped out. And so they're not perfectly aligning with watershed boundaries. It's a lot of layers kind of compiled on each other with range maps, yes, watersheds, land ownership, different threats, and all of those inputs that we have. I'd be happy to talk more about that after too. Question back.
Is that a shaded area in north central Whatcom County? I can't tell from back here. Is there a priority area that's not there, or is that just a glitch in the map on your slide?
Yeah, Whatcom, we have someone out of Mount Vernon who covers, at least half the Whatcom County sketch of Whatcom.
But the priority area is a little shading up in the top. Is that what that is? Like, it looks like it's Sumas or something like that. I can't really tell what that is.
Like up here?
Nope, Whatcom County further west, and
Like up here?
right there, this little shaded area right here. Is that a priority area?
I think that's Canada.
It is not.
Yeah, I don't think, Oh, is that, yeah, I don't think that is a.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the focus area, if it is, it is very helpful for us.
Like Roberts?
I'm not sure, I've never done that, so I do not.
I mean, that's Washington, that's Point
Yeah,
Roberts.
it's of a Canadian island that's in Washington.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say not the focus area, but if there's something very, very awesome up there, for lack of better words, I would like to hear about it and also would like to visit there because that's part of the United States and I just learned something today.
One last.
Yeah.
How often is this focus area changed? And I guess from the standpoint of southeastern Washington, and our amount of people from Seattle and Olympia and Portland that come and hunt game birds and deer and elk on private land. Again, I understand you said you got models, but how often is that focus area changed? I think that our field is over in Columbia County there for fishing all like that.
Oh, absolutely, there's amazing habitat down there, and so these change every 5 years, this runs till 2026. But, this next winter, we're gonna start soliciting input, and this is where all your voices can come in. And so I really want, hopefully I can get everyone's contact information and, create a listserv or at least an email list, and when I'm soliciting this, just blast out to everybody, and I'll create a list of questions and how you can provide input to the next strategic planning process. That's honestly a gap because of capacity. We have Ryan Walker, who's at the Herbal Wildlife Refuge. He covers the channel Scablands. That's one person covering that all area. That's, that's a lot of ground. But Soda Creek, I know not all about it, but I definitely know why it would be a priority, why it is a priority, and that could be a part of the 10% outside the focus area. We should talk about that. All right, so we mentioned, kind of talked about the financial focus, probably why I showed up here at but there's also technical focus as well, and just the technical assistance. We could show up and not spend money on projects, and sometimes those are the most valuable projects. You just have a landowner who independently wants to implement these projects. They don't really want any funding, but they just need a little bit of help. Like, hey, how do I use a no-till drill? I know the district's not on that, but it is that example. But how do I implement this? How do I implement that? Like, how high should I actually make? I got all this help. I would say, hey, maybe don't make the fence 48 inches, maybe make it 42, right? But those are just different examples of how we can show up and help out, helping our state partners, our other non-regulatory programs. Even if you don't need some money, but you need, you probably got a wide array of backgrounds in this room right now. Not all of them are wildlife management, just like I don't know everything about agriculture. How to reach out to you all as professionals, or at least start there. Start here with us if you have a wildlife question, and we can give you that non-regulatory thought on it, and just how to work with landowners through the situation. And just helping out with all the other farm bill programs. To hit on a couple of points, like how this fits into the scheme of things, as far as it goes back to eligibility too. There's no AGI, there's no cropping history requirements or anything like that for USDA programs that might be, eligibility questions. So just to clarify that, I get asked that sometimes. Next slide. Yeah, we kind of talked about external collaboration, so for the sake of time, let's skip that one. Then the importance of private lands conservation required here. I don't usually get this talk from a bunch of conservation organizations. You're trying to convince people of like why they care about private lands and wildlife. But more than 58% of Washington's private ownership. It's kind of middle of the road compared to the rest of the United States, but this is a very important 58%, like extremely important. That's coming from, I used to work in Illinois, it's 95% privately owned, this 58% has more, I'm trying to word this correctly, but there's a lot of potential in this 58%.
How much in Illinois you said?
95. It's corn and soybeans.
Yeah.
Kitchen doors.
Yeah.
And then, I had a quote on my notes, but I'm paraphrase it here. This is, from an article in Wildlife Journal, but it was like, even if we protect all of federal land, including BLM and military bases, we would still only conserve 43% of all federally listed species. So I paraphrased it, I probably butchered it, but that's a fact. Private lands, incredibly important for our priority species. Without private land cooperation and voluntary restoration, we lose. We absolutely lose.
Part of there's a lot of microclimates out here, so some places where this ecosystem only exists in like an area that's heavily private.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. All these site-specific variables. I mean, my farm, I'm 12 minutes south of Tumwater on the west side. And there can be times where I have 6 inches of snow, and in Tumwater, there's no snow. And I mean, so to your point, understanding sites and understanding why private lands, just are huge to reduce fragmentation and connectivity. All right, so some of the projects we do, here we go, pictures. This is Eastern Washington, wetland restoration question.
Question over here.
Oh, sorry.
About the private lands and farmlands, do you guys have any experience or any recommendations to share about managing croplands for like food plots, wildlife habitat, game, and or possibly converting these lands into restoration purposes, like on refuges specifically?
Yeah, we have a lot of examples of that on the refuge for sure, depending on where you are in the state. It's gonna be different, those management recommendations, best management practices. So if you have something specific on that.
I guess in Eastern Washington, we're trying to look into different management opportunities for cropland on the Canary Refuge.
Okay.
Trying to help out the Fish and Wildlife Service there, or potential the Ball Conservation District. And it's just been something we've been looking into, so I was wondering what else they do around the state, that Eastern Washington management practices would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I like that question. For the sake of time, can we round back later?
For sure.
I would love to help out with that, for sure. Yeah. So wetland restoration, Eastern Washington, channeled scablands. This really cool picture in the bottom, all of that is US Fish and Wildlife Service owned equipment. This is all from the Wildlife Refuge. Brian Walker and his group of heavy equipment operators built that wetland. And this is the wetland reserve.
That's a Marshall Creek, that's a wetland.
I believe it is. Yeah, no, yeah. There you go. You know all about it. If you know Brian, he's a rock star. So this is just an example of that collaboration. NRCS came, had an easement, needed help with the implementation. Brian helped with design along with NRCS engineers. Went out and built it. Excellent. Prairie restorations on the west side, working with our partners, Older's hired a Christmas tree farm, and this is south of Tenina. So we went in, removed the stumps, and we put a golden paintbrush. There's a picture over there. This is the large. It was normal. I mean, we're moving it, so the ground disturbance, it's already been done. you know, pounding or dugging that post. So the cultural resources was pretty standard.
So with this, I've heard of, them using electric collars for livestock. Is that implemented for this project?
Not for this one particularly, but we are working with places like Conservation Northwest, on implementing those things. And the Partners program has worked with places in Montana to implement virtual fencing. Next slide. Okay, water stuff, like this is our carrying, tracker, that's probably what I showed up, what can you do with water? So we do in-stream work, and, you know, we had our overwide channel, I just visited this yesterday, and it's up in the mud, it's incredible. I wish I was able to alter the slides to show you some of this pictures I took yesterday, but we had an overwide channel, at an old dairy that hasn't been used in over 80 years, and there's a spring coming out of the side of the bluff. And so awesome cold water refugia, should be anyway, but with that overwide channel and loss of complexity, we were missing habitat features. So we went in, we narrowed the channel, we created that thaw log so we have more scouring and more rearing habitat. We did a bunch of plantings that should show up in the next slide. Oh, there you go, next. And so, yeah, this Hancock Springs, and so nearly a mile long. And it's been a long project. We're working with land trusts, working with RFGs, working with conservation district, lots of project partners. Next slide. And so it's just a large scale multi-phase projects. Added wood, added gravel, you can see some of the sod mats that we put in there, we really need to work with, and that riparian vegetation that we put in. This is actually such a long-lived project that we're now collecting seed from this project and bringing it to our other restoration sites. And it's yeah, just incredible, again, having seen this 12 hours. Picture in the fields, you know? So, next slide.
What are those sod mats made out of, and did you make them on site?
Coconut fiber and then planted with different materials.
Just seeded on top of cocoa fiber?
Yeah. And some of them were sourced from the Newark Sustainability and Prisons program, and some of those were sourced from that.
I mean, we've been working on a project where we've been building streams, we've actually been trying to widen the channels. That's interesting that you're trying to narrow the channel.
I mean, it really depends on the habitat features that you're missing in that system.
Yeah, that's just interesting to me, these projects are almost the opposite of what
So
we're
this-
used to doing.
Right, so all that water, I mean, this is cold water stream that's coming out, but on the left, that before picture, that water is warming up, that was 100 feet wide, 4 inches deep.
I guess it's different because it's just a spring versus a creek that's already been like.
Yeah, there's gonna be lots of emphasis in just your habitat considerations and what is needed, what fish you're actually targeting. This is Upper Columbia, spring chinook, and some bull trout. We also have a brook trout problem in here, so they removed over 1,000 brook trout, in the first phase of restoration. And they haven't seen too many since, so it's not very cool. Project go for 610. So just another example of what our springs are now. It's getting a ton of use. So when the Mud River starts warming up here, probably in the next month, you're gonna start seeing springers go in there and start utilizing it. Just another picture of examples of view. This is, you know, some more different types of in-stream work. Kate was supposed to be here in the crowd with me today to back up. This is Katie's project. River down in Ellensburg. Maybe it's not my project, but just to give you an example, like Partners program, it's not a silver bullet, right? Like we don't have like NRCS funding per se, but you know, we're able to work. We have a lot of flexibility to work on things that often aren't covered in certain programs. Okay, sorry. So like this project, it was 285K total project investment, we put 25K. And that was, 8 acres of planting and some livestock exclusion fencing and with the private landowner and RFNG. Next slide. That right next door, to try to combat those random acts of conservation, create those conservation clusters, landowners said, hey, that's really cool, I wanna do it too. And so we stayed in that focus area, we did riparian plantings, we worked with the landowner to make sure that we were meeting their objectives. And they wanted a nice view of the river still, so we made sure to plant lower shrubs in that area to block all of that. We put in some pollinator resources and fencing. Next slide. So to hit on some other programs U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has really quickly, right? We have National Fish Passage Program. You should utilize that. Yeah, you probably use it all the time. Probably worked with Miranda back in the day. But if there's fish barriers, this opens up fish habitat. You have different culverts, collapsing bridges, whatever barrier it might be. Fish Passage Program is another voluntary program that can work on private lands. Next slide. Just an example of how we coupled Partners Program and Fish Passage Program together. We had a dish retirement near Ellensburg as well, so we needed more CFS back in the river. So we converted seven water users off of the ditch, 2 wells with PFW funds, and then National Fish Passage came in and helped out with the structures and the ditch itself. Next slide. Coastal program. Not for everybody to certainly know, but our coastal, our salty CDs in the room, no pun intended there. But this is a super flexible program. It's again voluntary, it can work on public land too. So if you want to talk about connectivity and reducing fragmentation, coastal program is, you can start at headwaters and do forest service or whatever it may be, and then go all the way to estuary. You can bring in Partners Program as well. It's just creating those coastal ecosystems that are resilient and adaptive to our climatic changes that we're facing. Next slide. Examples of projects that we've done with threatened and endangered species on private land. This is Kincaid's lupin, dairy farm, organic dairy farm, pipelines back to the lupin. Next slide. Oregon spotted frog, it's the best one we got, just kidding about it. But this is a project working with a cattle producer to do prescribed grazing to maintain, not alleviate, maintain riparian grass and create a short stature vegetation for seasonally inundated wetlands. That is the oviposition habitat, breeding habitat for Oregon spotted frog. So just working, creating forage and wildlife habitat. Next slide. Aquifers, this is a pretty contentious one, well, you said, right? And by last in the room, you might know that, but now people are seeing the benefits of potentially having aquifers on their property. And so we got a lot of exterior fencing, livestock pipeline, invasive species removal, and not even interseeding with the no-till. You see there to benefit the grazing practices and aquifer. Next slide. So yeah, quick recap, land stays in private ownership, Senate Partners Program, not giving away anything, we don't have the rights to the property, have to ask every time we come out there. Landowners find labor equipment can be used, we talked about the high priority projects, and then we have the financial and technical assistance available to you, your landowners, and your area. And I believe that is my last slide. And I know the technical is what it is for.
Right, good.
We have time for questions?
Yeah, we got a break at 10.
Okay.
Essentially, other time and equipment can be used for match, can district time be used for match as well? Or just like?
The time's kind of tricky. I would say no. But the funds that you're bringing in, you're bringing commission funds, or you're another, I think, towards the project, that absolutely, so those are now service funds. Yeah.
So there are any benefits to bringing beavers back to your property as opposed to the former residents took out the beaver dams, you know, she's bringing them back. Is there benefits in that?
In most of the cases, the beavers show up literally the next day. But they show up pretty soon, but we have had projects that the beavers have been extricated from the entire watershed. Wish Katie was here today, because she actually works with a beaver group, what's the name?
Such all of her neighbors around her took out all the beaver dams.
Yeah.
Back in.
Yeah,
It's actually working with the conservation on it.
Is that interbranch solution for beavers?
we work with branch all the time, they implement beaver dam analogs. I don't know if we have.
Stay till 10:30.
Yeah, that's the next one. I don't know if we brought beavers back to those particular projects, but we have brought beavers back to projects and seen immediate results, mostly resulting in, the chewing of all of our riparian plants. Let's get rid of that.
Do you have, somewhere where you can access the map of the focus areas and priority species?
I will send out our strategic plan that breaks down those focus areas way more.
Awesome.
It has priority species for each focus area, it has the conservation practices that we'd like to see implemented, kind of our rationale. I can send out this presentation through, so you have it.
Thanks.
In back.
For the fish passage program, does there have to be actual infrastructure blocking it, or could that apply to an example that you showed where the habitat was too warm and not great for spawning? Does it have to be like air basic infrastructure?
Wish Katie's here, she coordinates the fish passage program, I just utilize it when she gives me money. But I'm pretty sure there has to be a barrier to utilize the fish passage program. But if it's, if it's just the warming, like, it's just the thermals that we're concerned about, there are potentially other, funding sources that we can tap into. One more funding source that I didn't mention, it could be a benefit to a district, I've seen districts use it before, but it's the Recovery Implementation Program funding. And so it is for currently listed species, and if a district wants to apply to more outreach or do implementation to benefit this species, this particular species, that's a traditional grant program. I can assist you, going through that process, and that's where like your time can be paid for, so like any districts in here would like, well, we would like to do that, but we're like capacity. Time can be paid for to do research, to do monitoring, to do outreach, and to ultimately move the needle on this species.
So I got your email, so can we just email you so we can get information from you?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah, for sure. And I'll send, like, could I send you the strategic plan and you get it out to us?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.